Hello and welcome to Colin Bradley Artcast. I'm Stephen Bradley.
And I'm Colin Bradley. How
How
are
you
you?
doing, Dad?
I'm fine, Steve. Thank you. How are you doing? You
Good.
progressing with your
Yeah, yeah, all
unpacking and getting a little bit straighter, I imagine, now, are you? Or not?
yeah. Some we're making a little progress. It's slow, but we are getting there. There is just yeah, it's just a lot of distractions, a lot of stuff happening. So we're chipping away at it very gradually. But settling in anyway as you do in a new place. I've been here for a month now, and so it feels really nice and homely, and the area and getting to know our neighbours more and um, the locals and just generally in our routine. So it definitely feels like we've settled, even though the place isn't completely unpacked yet.
But it will be. You'll have it all sorted out in time. You just got to be patient, I think. I mean, you've got a lot of work on at the moment. You're doing a lot of work, and both you and Mims. You're both working very hard in your jobs. So, and little baby as well, toddling around. And your cats takes a bit of manipulating, doesn't it? And getting it, all your priorities right. But
Yeah,
it will happen.
yeah, exactly. And then obviously we've got another one on the way, so it's gonna it's gonna get a little bit more chaotic. But by then, this place would have been, we
Oh
would have
yeah,
been really settled
yeah.
here and all organised and have our routine and everything. So yeah, but life is great. Still very very grateful for this place. Still very much appreciating the house and where we're at, and so that's it's lovely. It's really nice. How's your week been?
Busy, as you know. We've had the final little touch that we've had with our renovations down on this ground floor here, and that's been the really it's taken 3 days, which is more than we thought. But it's all finished now, and it looks great, and it's the last thing. So we can now sit back and relax and enjoy it all, which is what we're going to be doing. No,
Good.
otherwise, we've got lots going on. We've got a food festival at the moment in Broadstairs over the next 3 days, starting today. We're going to pop along later on. It's an annual event. Well, it's a twice annual event actually. They have one in a smaller one in the springtime, and then one in the autumn. And it, it's it's very very well populated. I mean, we get hundreds and hundreds of people come. So it's nice because in Broadstairs you've got right through the year you've got different events going on, and it's good for the town, good for us, keeps us going as well. So, and say we're going to pop down and see what we can see later on today.
Lovely. That sounds very nice. Sounds very tasty.
Mm.
Very good. Okay. Well, this week you've started a new picture, and we want to talk about that and show that
Mm.
off to everyone. So we're going to pop that up on screen now. And a subject that you've done a few times in the past, not quite like this though.
Yes, I don't know how many times. It was about 4 or 5 times. Yeah, I'm sure people would tell me, but it's been it's something I've resisted for a while because I used to do it quite regularly. The tiger every now and again I used to pop a tiger in, but it's been a while since I did the last one, and I haven't done one in the pastel mat, which I was looking forward to doing because there is a difference. You can see even this one now. You can not so much with what you're putting on the screen now, but I've advanced it a little bit further now, and it's definitely easier to represent the fur and the stripes and all of the other things having that extra bite that's there with the pastel mat. So I think you'll be quite amazed when you see it finished. So will I.
Yeah, it does. It does look interesting. You've done. I think you've chosen the sand colored paper before for a tiger. You know, when one of the early Caran d'Ache pictures that you introduced Caran d'Ache pastel pencils, you did a tiger on a
We
rock.
did. I don't remember that.
Yeah, a long time ago. And I think that was the sand coloured paper. Is that really the best choice for a subject like
Oh,
this?
oh, without doubt. And I do mention that a couple of times as we go through. And you can see, even on that picture there, you can see the sand influence that's there. I mean, if you imagine that if I'd used a dark grey, for instance, I would have had to work quite hard to get the base colour into it. Whereas with the sand, you're kind of almost there. You've just got to, you've got that underbelly of colour, and that's really important. You don't leave it. I don't leave it at any point in time. Do I leave it just the paper? I wouldn't do that. But it's the influence of that that makes a difference. Again, if you have a lighter colour, you've got to work harder with the stronger tones to get those looking right. So the sand, well, it started off when I used to do the ombre. Well, I mean, the sand pastel mat is a bit darker than the ombre, but even the ombre paper helped enormously when I started out. But now we've got the benefit really with pastel mat. You can change. You can have light grey, which I've used a few times. The next picture, funnily enough, that I'm not going to talk about that today, but that's something I'm going to be starting probably next week, sometime next week, and that's going to have the light grey pastel mat. It won't have sand, so you'll see, I think, a difference then. I don't know whether I show you next week. It might be the week after, because we've got a busy week next week here. So it may be the week after that, but that's going to be the light grey pastel mat I'm going to be using for that. And I mean, I know that before I even start, because I know the reference picture I've got, and I know the colours that I'm going to be using, so I can see that myself onto the light grey pastel mat paper. Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It really is. I'm curious with when looking at this picture, when I've seen you do tiger stripes before in the past, you know, there's not a huge amount of colour that's kind of needed, you know, in terms of to get the fur and the stripes, because you know those stripes obviously aren't black for anyone unsure. They're not just black on. There's a couple of colours underneath that. But I'm wondering, because it's pastel mat, do you need to, or do you choose to put more colour in? Do you keep the formula the same in terms of all tiger stripes that you've done in the past, kind of the same, or do you try and push it a little bit further with a picture like this?
Interesting. That's a good question, and one that if we can just take the stripe on its own, I just use two colours for that. Just two colours. Now, normally I would use more than that, but because the sand colour pastel mat paper is quite a strong undertone, if you like, you don't need to do that. So what I did, the two lots of stripes there, there's a stripe across the top of the head, and where you've got the white, you can see where the white round the eye and down the bib here. What you do there is use the base colour of 175. Now, I'll come back to that in a minute. But with the orangey tones, the ochre tones, when you're using that, you use 176 as a base colour. I experimented with this before I started, and it worked really, really well. So why is that? Well, the reason is 175 is an earth colour, and earth colours go better when you're using greys and whites, okay? Because those greys you just about see on the white sections, that was 104 and 108. Those two colours, and they're in Carbothello. If you were using Faber on its own, it would simply be 273 and 270. So now, the reason you use 175 is because that is in the same league, the earth tones, as those colours. See what I mean?
Is it 708? Is that the warm grey that is in
Seven,
Carbothello?
they're warm greys. You hit it on the head. They're both warm greys. So
Yeah.
warm greys with 175, which is warm. Black goes on top. Well, black isn't a colour. It's a darkening agent. And that goes with everything. So you'd use the 175 and then the black for those stripes. You've got to kind of you intermix it a little bit. Sometimes you get an overspill, especially where you get the orangey fur and then you get the white fur. What do you do there? Do you do 176 as a base or 175? Actually, you put a little bit of both in there. You can mix it about a little bit. It's not that critical, and I think probably most people probably wouldn't worry about that. They just do it. And then you on the other side, you're using 176, which is it's kind of it's like an earthy brown. It's richer, redder, if you like, than the 175. If you put the two together, you'll see a very distinct difference between them. If you put 176 against 175, 176 looks red, reddy brown. You can see it very clearly. And that's exactly the colour that I wanted underneath those stripes. So it's interesting, isn't it? I find that fascinating. You'd have to experiment a little bit when you're doing something like this, but it worked out, and it works out. I've done more of those now, more of the orangey areas, and they come up absolutely brilliant. Now, the colour that you see on the left-hand side, sort of level with the mouth on the other side, is ivory. Now, in that case, you're using ivory as a base colour for those reddy tones, which is 186, 187, and there's a couple of other colours I throw in as well to give you that orangey look. This
So it's
is
slightly sort of advanced in terms of, your colour choices and things. Slightly different to, in a very basic comparison, the tiger that's a free class, for example, where you keep it quite uniform. These are the colours. That's there's only 6 in the whole picture, so you keep it quite straightforward. And it's just interesting advancing that and having more colours to choose from and how you layer those.
absolutely. And I haven't counted the amount of pencils yet because I haven't finished it, but it's going to be probably in the region of 30 odd, I would think, pencils I've used, and I think that's a conservative estimate. So there's a lot of colour. There's a lot of colours, and that's where I think when you have a range of tones that we've got through the different makes of pencils that we've got, you've got wonderful choices. You're able to get almost exactly the colour that you're looking for on that. Yes, it is. It's. I had to do this one because I wanted for my own benefit, and I love doing tigers anyway. Without doubt, my favourite animal, and I had to do it again just to see how far I can take it. And I think you'll find that my narrative throughout this is going to be very interesting to listen to, because I come across things and I think, wow, I've learned this. So I then tell the viewer, exactly why and whys and wherefores. And I think this is quite interesting to actually see that materialise, in the pictures. One of the things I have found with this, sometimes, when you're doing a picture, you kind of think, oh, have I got that right? Oh, no, I think maybe I ought to do this, and so on. This like indecision that's there. Now, everybody, I used to have this all the time. It used to be something that I was, oh, am I going to do it? Am I going to do it right? Now you get to the point now, in my experience, when you do get it right first time. You don't get it wrong. Now, that might sound a bit, boastful, but it's not. It's learning. It's have you learned from the experience you've had, especially through the different mediums, not the mediums, well, mediums too, really, watercolour, coloured pencils and so on, but through the experiences you've had with your subject material. Because each one, as I've said this before, each one's got its own set of rules, if you like. And once you master all those rules, you then fall back into this category of confidence that you are right. It's like an intuitive. You work on intuition. That tells you, if I think, what colour do I want? I'll wait for that colour to pop into my head. And it does. That's how I came to work out the colours of the stripes. But anyway, that alone now, it's quite deep, but I think people find that probably quite interesting to know that this is the process by which I'm working. But it makes it worth striving for. If you can ever get to that stage, and I'm sure many of our members will get to that stage one day, it's very satisfying to know. One of the things I did say as I was doing the orange stripes, because it can get tedious. If you're an impatient person, you think, oh God, I've got a whole lot to do here. And at one point in time, when I was going through quite a long process of this particular orangey fur, I thought to myself, I wonder if people are thinking, are you bored? Is this boring, Colin? So I actually echoed that and say, do you know, folks, I love doing this. I could do this all day long. And when you think, really, surely that's tedious. It doesn't become tedious if you're really enjoying the process, which I was there. So that's something that I have learned over the years. But when I first started, I used to think like that. Oh, I've got all that fur to do. God. In fact, I used to say sometimes you ought to just break away and do something else and then go back to it because it was so tedious. Well, this day it doesn't happen so much now, fortunately. But I find that interesting. Any other points you want to raise, sir?
I think it's really interesting seeing you go back to doing a tiger after so long, as you say, and sort of revisiting that with even more experience behind you and all of that. So I just think it's been really lovely to see you do that, and I know that I wouldn't mind seeing you revisit other subjects that you have done before, just to see you do them again. And see what choices you make, and see if the what the results are. Because I just think it's so interesting, and we know that tigers are popular as well. So I'm sure that everyone is going to really enjoy doing this picture. You say next week we should have a finished picture of this one.
You'll definitely have it finished, without doubt. You will. One of the things that I've got to do now, I can't give you a view of the photographs. I haven't got it here. But the background is different. Here again, I had to put my pencils down and talk people through. Think, what am I going to do with this background? I had an idea because the photographic reference I was looking for had that kind of background that I was looking for. But I thought, well, how do I achieve that? I'm not going to tell you. I have to wait until next week, and I'll tell you how I actually got to that. When you look at it, you think, wow, it's plain-ish, but very striking. So I'll tell you how I got to that next week. But these are the kind of things that I find fascinating, because you could be stuck. You could think, well, what am I going to do? I mean, in the past, especially with tigers and those animals, I've used greens and browns and ochres and greys. Well, I couldn't do it on this one. I could have done, but you have to follow basically what's given to you on the photographic reference, because that gives you the setting, if you like. You don't have to follow a setting, but you have to follow colour tones, especially if they appeal to you, because you're probably attracted by a picture. You know, you're looking at a picture and you think, oh, that really looks good. Why does it look good? Is it just the pose, or is it the influence of the background and the tones that relate to that? So you have to keep to it. But that's another thing that I think we can talk forever on that one next time I see you, when I get a bit further down the line.
Excellent stuff. Well, I look forward to seeing what the finished picture looks like next week, and then you've already got a second one lined up, another picture lined up. So that's very exciting. Good, lots to talk about. Fantastic. We haven't got any other questions this week, but if you do want us to discuss anything, then as always, please get in touch with us. We'll happily answer your questions, but we're also equally happy to look at Dad's work and discuss how he's doing, what he's doing, and hopefully that's still very interesting to you all. But for now, we will leave it there for this week. So thank you everyone for watching and for listening. I'm Stephen Bradley.
And I'm Colin Bradley. Enjoy your week.